Okay, today our topic is personnel administration and what areas do we cover or integrate in personnel administration? Because this is one of the main core areas in HCM that integrates and aligns with many other major and sub-modules. For example, FICO, that's for financial integration like payroll, taxation, costing. And if you talk about production area, production planning, of course, we need capacity planning for production, and that requires workforce management again. Shift planning, this is again a part of HCM where we have to configure personnel areas, sub areas, employees, groups and subgroups, and payroll areas and sub areas, and based on which our shifts will then be planned. Personnel development, training, event, again, these are part of HCM side for operations. Okay. Workflows are different processes that are aligned between or within the modules to align the process. Workflow is basically like creating an automated process. For example, if you talk about an employee's hiring process for a manufacturing company, so the hiring process will entail interviewing, and before interviewing, of course, it would be shortlisting, and after interviews and after being selected, after the employee is selected, of course, they'll have to go through a proper orientation or training program so that they become the part of the production department, for example, if they are getting hired for production area. So the orientation program would last for 10 days, for example. And after getting the appointment letter, there will be some processes, which will be, those processes are and being exchanged between different departments or say module like production department, HCM, HR department, and finance department. For example, after the appointment, the orientation entails that the person spends 5 hours in getting trained about a particular machine that is being used during production. So that machine is being governed under plant maintenance in SAP. That too will record it as a cost of training an employee. I mean, that cost will then be used to reflect how much cost is being incurred to hire an employee. And that will show how much employee turnover is costly or affordable for the company. So the workflows that we are talking about here are getting exchanged between plant maintenance, production, and HCM. These are automated workflows. Okay, because these processes are configured and they are properly maintained on a modular level using various consultants. So again, this is a big area that is a major part of business processes an HCM consultant will have to take care of. Compensation, again, this is part of HCM. Personnel cost planning, this is integrated and related with finance costing. So what are we going to cover? Infotypes, personnel actions, features, master data, company structures. We'll see that. And of course, when we're talking about master data for an employee, there are areas like personal development, payroll, recruitment, time, If we talk about time, of course, the schedules will have to be configured. Talk about recruiting, family status will be necessary, because if you're recruiting for an offshore role, the person, if he has dependents and family, he would not prefer getting hired for an offshore role. That person would prefer getting an on-site or an office-based role, or getting hired for a role that is nearby his residence. Payroll, again, tax information is related with payroll, where tax calculation and percentages will be configured. Personnel development, that depends on the organizational side, what position is the employee getting hired for, and based on that, personnel development will see what kind of training or benefits have to be transferred or shared with the employee based on their position, performance, job, even sometimes location as well. Okay. So master data is basically, again, as I said earlier, it provides us with a framework to hire an employee or place that employee in the organization structure, where the personnel sub areas like the corporate office or the factory, okay, that could have different hierarchies, and based on that, employees, their positions, their jobs, their placement, their payments and treatment, okay, benefits will base on the master data that we're going to create. Okay, so we will actually look into and see how personnel administration and infotypes, related infotypes, actually come into play. Speaking of structures, yes, we're talking about multiple locations, and multiple locations will be your personnel areas. These are personnel areas. Okay. Then personnel sub areas, that will be offices, factories, and then we'll have employee groups and subgroups. What are employee groups? Employee groups is active retiree, early retiree. Subgroups is salaried, contractual, part-time. These are salary, monthly, hourly, contractual, part-time. These are employee subgroups. So this is how an enterprise structure is laid out in HCM. Personnel area is reporting to the company code, and the personnel area is geographical. It's not hard-coded, but practices to keep personnel areas geographical. And personnel sub areas are the departments. Okay. Now the personnel structure, this is again how we classify the employees under various personnel sub areas. Like organizational unit is marketing or finance or CRM or sales. We have administrative department. Okay. So classifying the employees can be based on personnel sub areas, and with the combination of position and job, you can then segment a group of employees, and that will, those employee subgroups will then be maintained with a certain payroll structure. So employee groups, what are employee groups? Active retiree, premature retiree. Okay. Employee subgroups. Employee groups are active. For example, an active employee can be a working journalist, can be a clerical department. Okay. It could be permanent employees, it could be press people or factory workers to employee subgroup, because we have active set of employees, and in that active segment we have people who are permanent. So their payroll, their payments will be different, their taxation will be different. Clerical, their payment rules will be different, the working schedules will be different. Working journalist, that will have a different slab for the payouts. They'll be paid on a weekly basis or fortnightly basis. Contractual workers or daily wage, they will have a different, altogether different slab. That's why we need employee subgroups. So what we've discussed, personal area, which is geographical, personal sub areas, which are departments. Okay. Then we have employee groups, which is active. And then we have employee subgroups. Employee subgroups are different categories of workers that we have that are like permanent or contractual or clerical staff or daily wage workers. These are employee subgroups. Next comes in payroll area. Now these are very confusing terms, like personal area, personal sub areas. You have to keep that in mind. So personal area is geographical, personal sub area is departmental. Okay. Then we have employee groups, which is active retiree. Employee subgroups is the categories of people like salaried, contractual, daily wage, clerical, factory workers, and so on. Then we have payroll. We have to combine all these, and these combination will then decide what kind of payroll structure we'll have. Okay. So payroll area. Now, payroll area, why it could be one that comes to mind, that it should be one because it has to be paid like in USD, in US dollars. No, it's not like that. But payroll is basically area can differ for reasons. Payroll run on the 10th day. This is for the corporate guys. Now the corporate, if we talk about, is personal sub area, okay, which is office for employee group that is active, and for the permanent. Now this combination, combining that formula, they're getting paid on the 10th. While people from the personal sub area from the factory, personal sub area factory employee group active, employee subgroup is contractual, okay, or daily wage, or not daily wage, but contractual, contractual and fortnightly, for example. Their payroll run is on 28th. Of people from the offshore roles, okay, they are paid on 28th. Rotation, people working on rotation. So we'll need payroll areas, multiple payroll areas to process the payments. So organizational units, if you look at it, executive offices like corporate offices, personal sub area. Okay. And again, this also falls in personal sub area. So organizational units describes a company's distinct business unit by geographical basis, by departmental, or by business processes like payroll, benefits. Now these are processes. Jobs. Now these are performed by more than one individual. For example, manager, accountant, buyer. These are jobs. They are generally classifications of positions existing within a company. So position is explained by job description, JD. So these are classifications of positions existing within a company. So when we will actually settle down for an organizational structure and assignment, we'll have three areas: enterprise structure, personnel structure, organizational structure. Okay. which means enterprise structure will be company code, personnel area. Personnel structure will be employee group, active, employee subgroup, permanent, contractual, wage worker, daily wage, okay, or clerical, that will be employee subgroup. Organizational structure will be positions, jobs, and the relationship of the jobs and position reporting to which department. Now, if I speak of department, that is again for solve sub area. So it is interlinked. We just have to make a little bit of logical connection between all of this, which is personnel area, personnel sub area, employee group, employee subgroup, payroll area, payroll sub area. Okay. Personnel areas, personnel sub areas. Okay, we have to make a little bit of, we have to keep that in mind, or it will actually get a bit of confusing. It's not that confusing, but you just have to actually keep it in mind. Karachi and Kuwait, again, what will this be? Personnel areas. Personnel sub areas are marketing, admin, personnel sub areas, grouping 01. Now, personnel sub areas are defined independently. It can be grouped as well because admin of Karachi and admin of Kuwait are paid on 10th payroll area 10. Okay. So that's how you can group them as well. Okay. Active is employee group. Active working journalist and clerical, this is employee subgroup. Okay, so subgroup grouping can be clubbed together in a group for payroll settings. Okay, groupings using personnel sub areas. We talked about groupings, like for example, personnel sub areas, which is departments. They are grouped together because of their nature, and that nature again will be decided by consultants why a grouping is needed. It might be because of the nature of the people of work, people working over there. That could be based on the position and the jobs they have, and based on that, we shall go for grouping of personnel sub area grouping. Okay, and based on employee subgroups, will have groupings also. Keep in mind, we are talking about groupings. So groupings that could be personnel sub area or employee subgroups. Grouping using personnel sub areas. Now, what are personnel sub areas? Personnel area is physical, geographical location. Personnel sub area is corporate office or factory. That is a personnel sub area. So based on that, why do we need groupings? So that we can see what are the slabs for wages, what will be their schedules, what info types. We'll discuss about info types and configure that as well. And what holidays and schedules will be maintained for their holidays. So every grouping will have a different set of settings that we've just mentioned over here. Okay, it sounds a little bit of complex, but it's logical. Once you actually go through the entire uh, um, process, of course, you'll get it. Okay, employee subgroup is working under um, employee group is active, and under that, of course, is subgroups like clerical, working journalist, contractual, permanent, that is subgroups. Okay. And based on every segment or group that we make, sub areas will have groups. Those groups will have a separate work schedule, and every group will have their own KPIs or evaluations. Okay. And those groups will have their own pay scales, okay, grading systems, and the slabs available. So it's basically it's uh basically you have to segment and categorize the molecular details in a very logical manner. So the payroll treatment, slabs, assignment of pay scale will be different for the subgroups, employee sub areas and groups that we will maintain. Info types. Now, these info types are basically very, very important when it comes to HCM, because info types are basically the crux of the entire HCM, based on which your configuration will be maintained. So info types can be different, like family, address, organization assignments, bank details. These are info types. Actions. We'll talk about actions as well. So there are four primary master data info types: actions, organizational assignment, personal data, and payroll status. These info types are essential if personal number is to exist in the system. So these are the four. Let's see what are these four. Go into SAP and see. Okay. 10, personal number. Okay, it's getting taking time. We'll see it later. Okay, so info types, info groups, which means we can combine info types into groups, and personal actions will be what can be personal actions. We'll see it forward ahead what personal actions are. Info type menus. So what are info types we have to see? For example, personal data addresses. These are info types that actually maintain details as per the categories that we have, like organizational assignment, which department the person belongs to, personal data, like date of birth, name, ID card number or social security number, addresses, residence, permanent residence address or temporary residence or hometown, mother tongue, things like that, blood group, these are the things. Actions, basically. Now, action is statuses that the HCM module will show and exhibit what is basically happening with the employee, whether the employee is active, he's working, he is on leave. I mean, the current status will show what is the employee doing right now. So employee status is active and the payments are contractual or salary, that will be so that is basically actions. So status under actions will be like active, inactive, retiree, withdrawn. This can be configured as well under customer specific. Okay, personal action. Action type hiring. This person is getting hired right now. Reason for action, substitution for workplace. Okay, start is from 2nd of February and indefinitely. Okay, the position is hiring manager, HR manager for Lawrenceburg. Employee group is active, and employee subgroup, salaried employee, contractual employee, or daily wages. Okay, additional actions have not been maintained. Okay, 30. And these are actions, for example. display. Employment, active, inactive, retiree, withdrawn. This can be configured. We'll see that. Position is this, and so on. Okay. Now I believe this might be clear what basically actions are. Okay, so these statuses can be configured. So when we're talking about assignments, we've already discussed it: enterprise structure, organizational structure, and the third one was personnel structure. Okay, this is basically maintained to keep the employee records. Personal data, name, I've already told you what kind of personal data can actually go into this. It can be very, very detailed, it can be very skimmed based on the roles, based on the employee groups, subgroups, employee areas, based on that. Payroll status, is it wage, hourly, salaried, or commissioned? Payroll status. When was the payroll run? Okay. So now, info types and time constraints. Time constraint can be multiple, and they have multiple categories like record has no gaps, no overlap. Okay, I mean, this is like, for example, putting it into an example would be like schooling or university. Like schooling, every grade getting promoted to will have no gaps. Okay. Time constraint two. Records may have gaps. Record has no overlap. Gaps, for example, enrolling for bachelor's and spending 4 years, but there will be a gap between masters and bachelor's that is acceptable. But it cannot overlap. You cannot do masters with bachelor's at the same time. Time constraint three, records may have gaps, multiple records may exist. Multiple overlaps can exist, which means if you put it in an example, it's like a person working on multiple projects. Like a person is given task for Shell Pakistan, and he is also looking after Shell Egypt. So that can have overlapping multiple gaps, yes, and between employments and between assignments, there can be gaps for taking breaks or going on vacations. That can be gaps. Other info types can be address, bank details, basic pay. We'll see this. These info types are basically numbered. Okay. Now, we've already seen personal action features. Let's talk about features. Personal actions, these are basically sequential processing of info types that we have discussed, like uh, actions like hiring, what after hiring, getting deputed, getting the wages paid, or the salary is getting paid. So it has to go into a sequence. Okay, it should follow a sequence, and that HCM consultant would take care of that. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to EF40. Okay, this is personal area, which is physical. This is employee group, which is active. Employee subgroup will be contractual, salaried, wage type, wage group, or working journalist, okay, or daily wage worker. That is okay. Personal action, execute. Okay, reason for action, person is already hired. Substitution workplace, re-entry, temporary suspension. You can actually configure this. It's just that I want to show you what is personal action. Fast entry, we can also do fast entry as well. We'll see that later when we start configuring it. Additional info types are employee subgroup, where an hourly wage earner can be promoted to be a salaried employee. where action type is assignment. Why this assignment is being taking place? It has to be given a reason. So organizational assignment will be employee group, which is active. Employee subgroup will be a shift from wage earner to salary. Additional actions will be addition to family, like having a baby, right? So that is additional action. Again, this is logical with people who are, of course, married and their status can change. Or people are single who are getting married, that is also again additional action. So additional actions will be run through this report and it can be activated. We'll see that, of course. Other actions like contract elements 0016. We'll see what are these numbers and how to access these numbers. We'll see that as well. Okay. The tasks that are maintained and for example, contracts that are assigned to people that will be dated. Of course, it will have start and end date. Okay. So we have actions that cover these areas as well. So speaking of features, now features are objects within personnel administration that determine automatic default values, like default values can be joining date or it can be payroll date. And that helps to control system by queuing different company personnel or data structure fields that determine a specific value. So default values can be like department number, okay, or employee number that can be fixed, cannot be changed. And how does it integrate features? Those features are then used for, like employee number is used for recruitment and personal development, that this employee from number this and this will have a training program and so on. Payroll, that employee number will be used for calculating payroll. Training and event management, yes, events are there for this segment of the employee groups from this number and this number. That's how features are maintained. So this was our lecture on